Hey, Taniel, how's it going?
Risa, good morning. Hi. How are you?
Good morning. We're going to be talking about real estate investment today. So I think you're the perfect guy to be able to talk to about this with. And, I think that that's something that's been on a lot of people's minds when they think about Mexico and think about moving to Mexico. Some people think about investment, some people think about moving there full time,
Right.
but it's exploded
Yeah.
over a number of years in PV at this point. So I just kind of wanted to get on boots on the ground. What are you seeing? How have you seen things, the landscape change over the last few years? So why don't we kind of just start? You've been there for how many years now?
20, 2 decades.
Wow.
Hard to believe, yes. Yeah, time
Wow.
does fly.
And I assume you've seen clearly a lot. You've been in real estate for how many of those years?
17 years in real estate. Yeah.
Wow. My
Yeah.
God. So you've seen the growth, of course.
Oh, absolutely. When I moved here in, was it end of 2003 in October, and Vallarta was popular, not as popular as Cabo and Cancun. So, we had tourism here, but it wasn't like what it is now, fast forward 20 years. So definitely, I think Vallarta is on a lot of people's mind, and not just Americans and Canadians, but also Europeans and other continents. So, as a result of it, like our airport, when I first was flying to Vallarta, my first time in Vallarta was November 2001, and our airport was tiny. Tiny, tiny, tiny. I'm from LA. If anybody had been to the Burbank Airport back in the 80s and 90s, it was like a tiny little shoebox of an airport. We only had like 5 little gates and two, what do you call those? Those conveyor belts, for the luggage. That was basically it, and it was like that for some time. Even when I moved here in '03, for a couple of years it was like that. And then in like 2004, I think it was, when they started the first expansion that I had seen. And then it's expanded after that and after that. And right now, the airport is going through another expansion that they started a few months ago. And they're estimating completion around the end of this year, maybe the beginning of 2025. And they're thinking, it's going to accommodate at least 5 million visitors.
That's a lot. I got to say, hands down, people are always asking about different cities in Mexico, but Vallarta is always one of the ones that always comes up, right? People are so attracted to Vallarta for so many reasons.
Yeah.
So in terms of like investing in real estate in
hmm
general, right? Whether it's your primary home or whether it's just for, a vacation rental property, can you tell me a little bit about what you're seeing and, is it actually even a good investment? Do you recommend that to clients who are inquiring about it?
Well, I think when you come down here, it's a testament. What you see is because of the growth and because people just love coming down here. And when I started real estate here in '03, the majority of my clients, the buyers, were baby boomers. So it was like they're done working, they just want to live the easy life and just be in the tropics, by the water. And as the years have gone by and as Vallarta's popularity has increased and there are like younger people coming down here from all over the world, and some of them are wanting to invest here, and they are. They're nowhere near retirement, but they do want a slice of that paradise to be able to come down here, maybe on the holidays or whenever they have a little bit of a break. Some of them are snowbirds. They'll come down here for 6 months at a time during the winters in the States and Canada. And the rest of the year, or the rest of the time they're not here, they just rent it out.
Wow. So let's say, people who bought properties, 10 years ago or 5 years ago, do you see those properties appreciating? Is people getting their money back?
The answer is yes, but of course, like real estate, it depends on the area. So wherever you're seeing growth, tremendous growth, that's the hot spot, and that's where people are investing in. I've just sold a couple of properties in the last couple of months, and those clients bought that property anywhere from like 2 to 7 years ago, and some of them have appreciated 100%, and some of them have gone up like 30, 40%. It's crazy to think that in such a short period of time, but that's kind of the market we're living in.
Wow, that's
Yeah, not every
crazy.
and not every
Right.
property is like that. Granted, Risa, but these are just specific to the properties that we've been selling recently. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I guess you see probably some, customers, clients coming back and buying either additional properties or flipping their properties or whatnot.
Yeah, and I've had clients. I have a client right now. Their kid's getting older, and they're not going to be able to come down as much. It's going to start going to college, so they've decided to, and they don't need to rent it out anymore because they're kind of in a place in their life where they're financially more stable because the kid's gonna leave a. They're going to be what's it called? Empty nesters. So they're downsizing. So they're selling their current condo and they're buying a smaller unit in the hills of Vallarta, the Mapas area.
That's amazing. Wow, that makes sense, right? And then they can use that extra cash for something else, or buy another
Yeah.
property, or whatnot. So, do you see a lot of people buying property and then using it, renting it out as a vacation rental?
Oh, absolutely. Again, not all of our buyers are retiring, and most of them are coming back. They're going back and forth between the States and Canada. So for them, it's ideal just to rent it out. And if you can rent it out and generate some income to pay for the overhead, like your HOA dues, property tax, and then make a little bit of money on the side, and while the property appreciates, why not?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think it's fairly easy to do, isn't that right? I mean, you can either do it yourself or there's probably property management companies all over Vallarta.
Yes, I mean some owners are very hands-on. They prefer to just do all the rentals themselves, and they enjoy it and they're great at it. They've done it back in the States or Canada, so that's what they want to do, and that's fine. I think it could be a little bit tricky if you're not here, so you want to have a good team here that's going to check people in, check them out. And there are owners that they just want to be hands off. They'd rather hire a property management, vacation rental services company and have them handle everything. They'll get their fee, and then the rest of the money will go to the owner's bank account. So everyone's kind of in a different place. You can definitely do both. But again, if you're going to do it solo, make sure you know the tax laws, how you're going to pay the income tax here in Mexico for the rental, so you
Which is
don't want
high.
to, which is higher than what we're accustomed to in the States, and you want to be compliant, with the laws of Mexico.
Yeah, exactly. And I know there are actually accountants in PV and also throughout Mexico who actually cater to the expat community or people
Yes.
who have the, rental properties and that sort of thing, just to make sure that you are complying. You're right. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's good to, calculate and do all your numbers first to make sure that, say, if it does sit for a while, that you can still afford it, right? If you're looking at it, purely as an investment property. So let's focus on the romantic zone, right? So I think that that's a really great example of the growth that you're talking about, right? And then
Yes.
I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the other neighborhoods that you're kind of seeing as up and coming sort of thing. But I think the romantic zone is kind of the hot spot, right?
Yes.
So lem- we've filmed several episodes of House Hunters. Most of them always have, condos in the romantic zone. So I've been through a lot of those buildings as well. A lot of them have like really nice amenities and that sort of thing. So what kind of growth have you seen over the last decade? And do you think like the romantic zone is tapped out?
The growth has been insane. I mean, really insane. And I never anticipated Puerto Vallarta was going to be as popular as it is now. And I moved here because I was kind of done with LA. And so Romantic Zone was like a really cool, like a fun place to kind of set my new roots. And all of a sudden, like, boom. I mean, the real estate market just literally exploded around 10 years ago. And there are a lot of buildings that have gone up. Are there growing pains? Of course. I think every city that's kind of growing really fast, generally speaking, the market trends, outpace the government funding and the infrastructure. I mean, I've seen it in Los Angeles, and I see it here. So eventually, government catches up, and the utility companies catch up. But during that time, it's a supply and demand situation that we're dealing with. And the romantic zone has definitely is the lion's share of the real estate market and has been for over 10 years because of the prime location. One reason. you're right there by the beach, Los Muertos Beach, like one of the most famous beaches, in Mexico. You've got the beautiful mountains, and you have, it's a walkable neighborhood. You have all these cafes and restaurants. Basilio Badillo Street, we call that Restaurant Row. There are a lot of galleries there, retail stores and cafes and restaurants, clothing stores. I mean, you name it, it's all there. In Ignacio Vallarta Street, there are more shops and nightclubs. Los Muertos Pier is the famous pier that's part of Los Muertos Beach. So really, everything is in such close proximity from the ocean and all the amenities of the city. It just makes it very convenient for someone who's coming down here, let's just say for a long weekend or week, that they can just kind of maximize their vacation and not worry about getting stuck in traffic in a car going somewhere.
Right, right. And don't forget about the charming cobblestone streets. I mean, that's part of it, right? It's
Yes.
not only central, but it just looks so charming. I mean,
Yes.
you do see a lot of new buildings up and stuff, and I think that it still has a nice mixture, right? I think you can
Yes.
still kind of see your local Mexican bodega, your local Mexican restaurant and stuff. And then if you want kind of the fancy high rise, there are those buildings as well with the rooftop bar and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, and you do have the older buildings from the 80s and the 90s, so they're more classic in terms of the architecture. I guess you could say, old world charm. And then you have buildings that are anywhere from like a couple of months old, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and having all the bells and whistles, a rooftop pool, a gym. Some of them have what do you call it? Like retail stores on the ground floor. So it's really a nice mixture of everything, and it's it's like a very diverse Mexican community here, from the locals that have been here for generations, the families, and all the tourists that come and go.
And I think that so say, if you bought, I mean, that's where you see most of the appreciation happening if someone has, bought a condo 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I mean, I feel like you're pretty much guaranteed that that the condo has appreciated quite a bit since that time if you bought in the romantic zone.
Yeah, and it's not just the appreciation of the newer construction, but there are a lot of older buildings that their property values have appreciated as well. And not everybody wants, shiny and brand new. So they don't want to be reminded like they're living in the States or Canada. And let me tell you, there are a lot of modern Mexican buildings. So, people think, oh, it's so American. Well, no, it's just modern. Modern is modern for the most part. But if you want something more old world, you're looking at maybe 20, 30 years old, sometimes 40 years old, you can find that in the romantic zone and other parts of the city. And I've seen those property values appreciate. I'll give you one perfect example. There's a multi-building gated, condominium complex called Loma del Mar, which is adjacent to our new office. And when I started real estate, and for a number of years after my start, the property values at the condominium complex weren't really increasing. They were like in the low 100s, 120, 150, and it was just kind of teetering around there. Now there are units that have sold in there in 300 plus. So you've seen that appreciation in some of the older buildings as well as the newer.
Right. But like you've told me several times, the Mexican real estate market often, follows the American real estate market. So like back in 2007, 2008, or 2008 when the crash happened, 2009, it crashed in Mexico. And then also, of course, with, COVID, everything went berserk in the United States in terms of real estate. So did Mexico. Yeah. Would you say that's kind of a accurate comparison?
Yes and no. I'll explain. So I was here during the 2008 recession. And so, our market here, the majority of the buyers that I deal with are foreigners. They're Americans and Canadians. So if the U.S. market crashes, we're going to lose that buyer pool at some point. But usually, it could take 6 months or 8 months until things really kind of trickle down. What's nice is our market, 90% of our transactions, over 90% transactions that my office deals with are cash, right? So we're not we're not based on the mortgage market. We didn't have the subprime that that they went through in the States and the catastrophe that it caused. So the market really didn't crash here in terms of property values. Things did slow down during those years, 2008 until I would say around 2011 or 12. Things did slow down. There were still buyers out there, but it wasn't as crazy, as during the healthy market prior to the '08 crash. And I can't say the same for the rest of the country, because the rest of the country, they're not all like resort destinations. Like if you go to Guadalajara, Mexico City, and some other parts in the middle of the country, it's just going to be nationals buying there, and generally it's going to be their primary residence. So I really can't say what their market is like. I can just kind of talk about Banderas Bay. So we did go through that slow, quiet spell for a while, and then like around 2012, 13, it really started to pick up, and we just can kind of riding that roller coaster upwards. And now things are kind of like in the States and Canada, things have slowed down. In 2023, 2024, we still have the buyers here, but it's not as insane as it was in 2021 and 2022. I mean, I think the market was just going crazy everywhere during those few years.
Yeah, no, it was not the norm at all. And every real estate agent I talked to was like, this is not normal. It was like almost too much, because like you'd literally just show a house and like within hours it would be sold.
Oh, Risa, I mean, one time, this is about 2 years ago, at our old office, there are condos above, and somebody wanted to sell their unit. So they asked me to go up and just kind of like evaluate the property. So I walked up, looked at the condo. They wanted to list, so I went back to the office. I was literally in the middle of writing up the listing agreement. And then another owner ran into our office saying, "Is Taniel here? I just saw him in my building. Is he going to be listing, that condo he just stepped foot in?" And I was like, "Oh my God, do they have like binoculars? Are they spying?" And then because that guy is an owner and had a friend who wanted to buy, and I didn't even have to finish the listing agreement, we sold the unit. And we sold it above asking because they didn't want to risk the owner saying, "Oh no, let's list and see what the market does." So we sold it for a few $1,000s over asking, without even having to finish the listing agreement. And then we were dealing with multiple offers during those couple of years. We had anywhere from like 3 to 12. I had one listing at 12 offers come in. It was insane. So we're not in that market. I don't think we're in that market. You guys are in that market in the States right now for most cities. But we are kind of seeing things stabilize and kind of going back to normal. And I think some owners that kind of got a little too excited and priced their properties way over market, at the end of 2022, early 2023, now they're kind of coming down to reality and making the adjustments necessary to move their properties.
That's great. So do you think that 2024 is a good year to start, like really, if you're looking at real estate investment in Mexico, it's a good time to kind of be doing that research and seeing if maybe it's a good investment?
Yeah, there are, like in pre-construction right now, there are a lot of great discounts being offered. Some developers are being more flexible. Again, it's not like sizzling white hot like it was in 2021, 2022. So, and I don't want to necessarily say it's a buyer's market or it was a seller's market, but we're definitely seeing adjustments, which I think is great, because I think some sellers got a little too excited thinking their property is worth way over, like they're in La La Land, some of them.
Yeah.
So
that was in the U.S. too.
That happened in the U.S. They're like, "Oh my God, so why don't I just list it for 40% above market?" Because everyone's going to, someone's going to be silly enough to pay for it. Well, not happening. So, so the adjustments are being made, and then once that's being made, and people have, a lot of information at their fingertips nowadays, right? So 20 years ago, it was a lot more difficult to kind of do your own due diligence. So now it's a bit easier. Granted, not all information online is factual. It's updated. Some of the information there is 100% false. Some of it might be close to 100% true. But it's going to be kind of hard to differentiate. What do I believe? And that's when I think you should get in contact with a reputable real estate agent wherever you're thinking of investing, and have a really, frank conversation with them. Like, this is what I'm seeing in the market. Is this what's happening? What kind of numbers can you share? Do you guys have an MLS system? So you could see like hard facts and the numbers. And so that way you can, make an informed decision moving forward. But definitely, We are selling, and we're selling because now some of the sellers have gotten real with their numbers. And it's a difficult conversation to have sometimes. Not a lot of owners don't want to reduce the price, but you have to listen to the market. The market is going to dictate what something is worth. So if they're not willing to spend that kind of money, then maybe we're above asking. So if you have a reasonable seller, and again you show them the numbers, and most of them, at least in my office, they've been discounting it. And I don't say necessarily discount, but they're kind of pricing it where it should have been, right? And once they do that, we're seeing a lot more activities and getting some accepted offers.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So say someone can't, afford the romantic zone anymore. What are some other neighborhoods that, you recommend people looking at in terms of you're seeing growth? Like, let's say for purely for purposes of investing, right? They're not going to be in PV all year round. They're probably going to be there a few times a year. Are there certain neighborhoods where you kind of see this kind of burgeoning growth that is worth taking a look at?
Yeah, absolutely. So as the romantic zone, continues to grow and a lot more buildings are coming up, for some people it might be a little bit too busy for them. So for some people they may be priced out of the market because of the supply and demand and the premium location of the romantic zone. Granted, there are still a lot of great values in the romantic zone, and if you're thinking of purchasing an investment property and your budget allows, then the romantic zone is still king. But there are other areas that are the princes, I guess you could say, and they've been kind of up and coming for the last few years. Versailles and Fluvial area. So Versailles was predominantly just a middle class, like a Vallarta traditional neighborhood. Again, generations of families have lived there for a number of years. But over the last 6, 7, 8 years, we're seeing a lot of growth there. So some condominium buildings going up, more affordable pricing, smaller buildings, but still it'll be modern. Most of them will have the rooftop pool, maybe a rooftop bar and a lounge area, maybe a little fire pit or a jacuzzi, and you've got all the conveniences, of the neighborhood, from the restaurants, medical facilities, and Fluvial pretty much has been. It's a virtually new neighborhood, and when I say virtually new, I'm talking about maybe 15, 16 years, maybe pushing 17 now. And that was just flat and jungle. There was nothing there. It's adjacent to Versailles. And in Fluvial, being a brand new neighborhood, all the electric is underground. The streets are paved. You don't have cobblestone streets over there. And you have some green spaces, some parks. Costco is in Fluvial. So that whole region has been growing significantly because of its location. It's still fairly central from Versailles and Fluvial to the romantic zone. It could be anywhere from like a 10 to 15-minute drive. There's a little bit of traffic. But you're a few minutes from the beach, from those neighborhoods. You have all those restaurants, shopping centers, and you have the nightlife hotspots in and around the area. So it's kind of like the new romantic zone in a sense, but just a few minutes away from Los Muertos Beach.
Right. So within the neighborhoods you can walk around. Can you walk to the beach from Versailles and Fluvial?
Oh, if you
Or you
walk,
drive?
well, if you drive, I would say it's maybe 5 to 8 minutes. If you walk, I don't know how fast of a pace you're going to walk. It can take you maybe 20 minutes or so, to
Right.
walk to the beach. Yeah, it's not bad, but it's a bit of a walk.
So
But driving is 3 minutes.
geographically, Fluvial and Versailles, I know they're next to each other.
Yeah.
So if you describe, so how far is it from the airport?
Sure.
And
So
then where is it within, so if you have PV, where within PV is it?
Sure. So Banderas Bay is kind of like a crescent moon, right? And the airport is pretty much like right virtually in the center. So from the airport, as you drive south, Versailles and Fluvial is like at the halfway point from the airport to the romantic zone. So from the airport, you're looking at around a 10-minute drive to get into, again, depending on traffic, 10 to 15 minutes, to get into Fluvial Versailles. And from there, it's another 10 to 15-minute drive to get to the romantic zone. So if you look at the commercial area, like the busiest commercial area where the tourists hang out, restaurants, cafes, and the beach, and all the nightlife, between the airport and the romantic zone, Conchas Chinas area, which is just south of the romantic zone, Versailles and Fluvial will be right in the middle. So it's literally in the heart of that busy region.
Right, right. Yeah, and I've been there. It feels a lot more residential, I would say, than the romantic zone. The romantic zone feels more like a city center, right? So you kind of have more of the taller buildings and the block to block, and where I feel like Fluvia Versailles, things are a little bit more spread out for those who really enjoy that. But it's definitely worth checking out. And so I know that there's also a lot of building happening over in Fluvial and Versailles as well. Is that right? Which means I guess people are betting on the fact that it's really growing and that
Yes.
people are going to want to move there.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely. It's been booming, and Fluvial in particular right now, you're seeing some new condominium buildings going up. And what's nice about investing in these areas, Risa, is that it's got a diverse rental market. So you're not just dependent on vacationers that are coming down for the short term. You have some expats that are living here long term. Maybe they're snowbirds, so they're staying here maybe between 3 and 6 months. Also, local nationals that are working here, they want to be near their work, be near all the city, the amenities. So you're not just dependent on one rental demographic group. So you've got that diversity, which also allows you to be able to target, certain rental groups as well. And the infrastructure, they're putting electrical on the ground. Like Versailles, most of the streets in Versailles were cobblestone or just dirt. I remember years ago when I used to drive there during the summertime, during the rainy season. Some of the streets were just almost like a lake of mud. It was really dangerous to drive through.
Wow.
So most of the streets have been paved. It's all just kind of concrete right now. So they've been improving the infrastructure in Versailles for quite some time now because there are new buildings going up, people are investing and moving into the area, and they want to be able to offer them the proper infrastructure and the amenities for people to enjoy and for that investment to grow.
Wow. Are there any other neighborhoods that you kind of see growth happening?
Yeah, so between Versailles and Fluvial and the Romantic Zone, there's another region that's kind of up and coming, and that's the Lazaro Cardenas neighborhood. There's a little track and field, we call it the stadium that's there. The Sheraton Hotel is on the beach adjacent on the other side of the stadium. And in Lazaro Cardenas, you have a nice, like a molehill, and there's some condominium buildings going up over there, and the views from there are just spectacular. So if you really want to be in like one of the most, like the oldest neighborhoods in Vallarta, Lazaro Cardenas is one of those neighborhoods. But again, the city has been starting to improve the infrastructure, and the amenities continue to improve. A lot of really cute cafes. There's a very popular restaurant called Ocho Tostadas that's adjacent to the stadium, and you can find like taco stands, and then across the taco stands you've got like a sushi restaurant and a seafood restaurant, a lot of mom and pop businesses. So it's got that old like a Mexican family traditional neighborhood, and then you've got some of the newer modern buildings going up. And over there, you got a lot more bang for your money in terms of real estate, and if you're going to be renting it out. Whereas $300,000 for a brand new construction, Romantic Zone might get you a studio or one bedroom. In Lazaro Cardenas, there's a building right now, for $350 and up, you can get a 2-bedroom, 2-bath with some wonderful ocean views.
Wow. So that's a big difference, right? And if your money can stretch further. And so how far is it from the Romantic Zone?
So from the Romantic Zone to go into Lazaro Cardenas, I would say it's around 7-8 minute drive. It's not far. It's at the halfway point. It's just past we call it the big tunnel. So anyone who's been to Vallarta, when you say the big tunnel, they'll know exactly where that is. So it's just beyond the tunnel.
That's awesome. That's awesome. As we kind of begin to wrap this up, so if someone is really seriously thinking about Mexico to invest in real estate, are there some kind of beginning due diligence things that you recommend that people do before they even contact a real estate agent, right? There's
Sure.
certain things that they should kind of figure out for themselves.
Sure. Great question. So, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things you can do. You know, Mexico's, I guess, has a very diverse climate. So there are cold regions, there are deserts, which is very dry and hot. You've got the tropics, subtropics, you know, and when you go on the East Coast, like I was in Jalapa, which is the capital of Veracruz, they had fog, which I never knew there were fogs in Mexico. So that's how ignorant I am. And it was really chilly. So kind of, you know, figure out what kind of climate's going to work best for you. Maybe go there for a visit a couple of times. And then if you're kind of leaning towards that city, then kind of start researching online the properties. And then definitely before you do anything, I recommend getting connected with a reputable agent. And have, you know, those preliminary discussions. And nowadays with virtual meetings, you know, it's great just instead of just talking on the phone, and just kind of, you know, have a couple of virtual meetings, or if you prefer to just talk on the phone, that's fine. And, you know, set up your wish list and get that going, and have your agent start sending you some properties that goes along your wants and needs. And then, you know, schedule a tour before you come down. And then if you're serious about buying, you know, some people want to rent in those neighborhoods before they purchase, and we have clients who do that, and that's absolutely great. And then others, they've been to these neighborhoods and they're ready to pull the trigger. So everyone's coming from a different place. But definitely research the climate, and, you know, like during the winters in Vallarta, it's different than the summers, so don't assume the weather's going to be like that year round. It's not going to be like that for 12 months straight, right? So we do have seasons. So maybe go there at different times of the year to make sure, yes, this is definitely where I want to be, and then get the ball rolling, you know, and enjoy the process. I mean, it's fun. You're transforming your life. It's this next phase. You know, you're designing your future. So enjoy the process and connect with an agent that knows what they're doing. They're seasoned, they're experienced, and they have the support system and other professionals like real estate attorneys and notaries that they've partnered with that are going to safely get you to that finish line and get you the keys to your new home in Mexico.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Yeah. So everybody, if anybody who is interested, actually, Taniel and I do a free webinar. It's called Dream Retirement in Mexico, where we talk everything about some of the more popular places where people are moving to. Taniel talks about the buying basics because it is different than buying real estate in other parts of the world, especially in the United States and Canada, that you should know about. And then we have healthcare consultant Pamela Thompson, who talks about some of the healthcare options for foreigners. So it's all free. So all you got to do is register at dreamretirementinmexico.com/webinar. Taniel, thank you so much as always, and I can't wait to see you in the flesh.
Yes, finally.
In a few weeks.
Awesome. Thanks, Risa.
Thank you. See you soon.
I'll see you in Mexico.